did you think of all the zombies on WrestleMania Backlash? Did that ruin the pay-per-view for you? Is 6 matches the perfect length for a WWE pay-per-view? I'm Ryan Joy, and I run MinutesToBellTime.com, a pro wrestling website and database tracking pro wrestling from around the world. On today's show, our own John DeCani and I sit down to talk about WrestleMania Backlash, also Impact Under Siege, and all the latest headlines in the world of pro wrestling. This is the Daily Wrestling News Show for May 17th, 2021, where you can catch up on all the latest pro wrestling news. And here we are, John, just hours after WrestleMania Backlash has gone off the air.
Yes, good morning, sir. How are you today?
Good morning. We are powered by the Eastern Observer. So let's jump into WrestleMania Backlash.
All right.
There has been a news coming out of here, and first and foremost, I think the most polarizing news of the day are these darn zombies. Everywhere you look, forget the fact that there was a great main event or a great semi-main event. Yeah. All anybody's talking about are the zombies. And largely what you see online is hate for these zombies. So if there's somebody out there that liked the zombies, you're going to have to create a post that says, I like the zombies. And see, so lumberjack match, and the zombies made up all the lumberjacks. And eventually at the end of the match, they swarmed on top of Miz like Walking Dead. There's no way Miz or Morrison will be on tonight's show, right? They're written off. Or maybe they're zombies now.
Exactly. If they're coming back, as the Walking Dead. So
right. So if you missed last night's WrestleMania Backlash, that's one of the big things you missed. Also, like I mentioned, though, those two main events, the WWE Championship match and the Universal Championship match, boy, did they over-deliver, in my opinion. And we'll get to the other stuff, but those matches in particular. Let's start with the WWE Championship match. There's some things in that match that I've never seen before.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Braun Strowman took a vertical suplex, not a regular vertical suplex, a delayed vertical suplex. Yeah. Lashley and McIntyre together hesitantly worked together, but they lifted Strowman up in the air and they held him there for about 5 seconds and then dropped him. And I've never seen Strowman take that move before.
No. But maybe even more surprising was the one I'm sure you're going to get to next, so I'll let you go right ahead.
Drew McIntyre, here he goes, ripping off Taka Michinoku. And he hit a Michinoku driver on Braun Strowman. That move's dangerous enough as it is, right? Because you're basically doing a sit-down body slam where you're dropping the guy hopefully on their shoulders, not their head. But it's made to look like it's basically a brain buster style move. He hit it perfectly, and Braun's not crippled. Another move I'm sure Braun Strowman has never taken.
100%. The whole idea of a triple threat matches are usually, a little bit of chaos. So I'm always a little worried when it's 3 huge guys. Man, did these guys pull it off in every sense of, what you could have hoped for. These guys, they beat the hell out of each other. There were some really, as you've just listed, some unexpected high spots. They up the ramp through the LED wall. There was just everything you could have asked for in a match that, it got like a little less than 15 minutes. But there was so much packed into that 15 of screen time.
Isn't it interesting that this is a match that we've seen variations of on Raw every week for a month or more? Yeah. More probably, right? Drew and Lashley have been going at it for 2 months. So we've seen this on Raw. We've been complaining about the fact that this is all we're seeing, and it's repeats. They're basically reruns all the time. But they managed to come out with a bunch of new stuff in this match that made it really interesting and special for this show. Braun also took an overhead belly to belly suplex, and he nearly died. We're talking inches. So pretty cool semi-main event. Is the best Braun Strowman match I think I've ever seen. So
Braun was putting on some really good matches before he pissed somebody off backstage like a year and a half ago. I think I don't know if it necessarily was directly involved with this, but I remember when he eliminated Ali from a Royal Rumble or some kind of battle royal. I don't remember if it was the Royal Rumble, and Ali kind of banged into the announcer's table. And I remember reading that Braun was getting some heat for that backstage. And then all of a sudden it was like Braun was forgotten for a little while there.
Yep.
But leading up to that, I was really coming to enjoy him, because when I see a big guy debut in the WWE, say what you want, I'm a mark for the workhorse guys. I see a big guy come in, especially a guy that we hear his backstory, and he was a world's strongest man competitor. He was a power lifter. And I'm thinking to myself, here's another guy who's not going to be able to move. He's not going to be able to do anything but choke slams and power bombs. He's just basically going to stand still in the ring. And watching Braun come along, I was really, really impressed in how he was becoming a wrestler. He wasn't slow. He wasn't plodding. He wasn't all power moves. He would really work a match. He just happened to be of this enormous stature. So I think last night we got kind of a reminder of just how good he was before he kind of he was the Universal Champion for a little while, but it still kind of felt like he was kind of put on a shelf for a little while. And last night was just a hell of a performance.
Yeah. And he was carrying that. When he was Universal Champion, he was kind of carrying that belt, keeping it warm for Roman Reigns.
Exactly.
Which was the main event. Roman Reigns versus Cesaro. Nobody thought Cesaro was going to win this match. Cesaro didn't win this match, but it was a good match. Cesaro had a great outing for his first WWE World Championship match in WWE. Went quite a long time. Went close to a half hour, I think.
Yeah.
But eventually Cesaro, he couldn't get out of the guillotine, and referee stopped for the finish. So Cesaro well protected there. He didn't take a pin or didn't submit or anything. So, we'll see Cesaro down the road. But after the match, Seth Rollins came out, had a little interesting moment laughing with Roman, and then Seth Rollins went to town on Cesaro. He Pillmanized Cesaro's arm, which happened to be the body part that Roman focused on the entire match. So really good, solid work from Cesaro in this match. Great match.
Yeah, you don't always get a lot of really good psychology in a main event like that, where one guy is a complete destroyer and the other guy is a technician. But yeah, they sold the focal point being Cesaro's arm, and then he couldn't hold on to the sharpshooter, and he couldn't hold. He grabbed the legs for is he going to go for a swing? I don't know, but the arm hurts. There was just 20, almost 8 minutes of what could have just been a destruction on one end was just a really, really good match, and just overall a better than expected card.
100%. So the only title change that we had the whole night was Dominic and Rey winning the tag team titles. So Dom and Rey, Dominic got the pin on Ziggler. He used a frog splash, got the pin on Dolph Ziggler. It was the moment that we've been waiting for, the moment when we thought should have been maybe at WrestleMania, but I guess we'll take it here. But that was the feel good moment that we wanted, I guess.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I guess maybe maybe it's just me, but there's so much wrestling nowadays, and we hit on these angles so many times before we get to a big blow off at the pay-per-view that sometimes I'm second guessing myself. Like the minute they were inching towards the Mysterios becoming the first father-son tag champs, I was like, well, this is going to happen. There's no two ways about it. This is going to happen. And then the last couple of weeks, Rey kind of stole 2 pinfalls from, one from Rude, one from Ziggler.
Yeah, no.
And it got to the point where leading up to the match, I'm like, have they put the Mysterios in front of us so much that they're setting us up for a letdown? That, Rude and Ziggler are going to do something and, through heel tactics, hold on to these belts. And quite frankly, I'm not really excited about the Mysterios, being the first father-son tag champs like that. I still think Dominic should have had his nice little 1 month run that brought him in, and he got to tag with Dad, and he got to be part of Dad's storyline. And then he should have gone down to NXT and worked on becoming a wrestler. So I wasn't necessarily overly excited about this. And then Ray came out dressed as Adam West Batman, and I'm all on board with the Mysterios.
Yeah, and you pointed out, so the whole story of this match was that Dominic got beat up by Rude and Ziggler earlier in the night. Ray was going alone. So, of course, Dominic came out toward the end of the match to make the save. As you astutely pointed out, yes, Ray was dressed as Batman, and we all saw that. But you pointed out that the greens and the whites and the stuff that was in Dom's was very Joker-esque.
Yeah,
so, my whole thing is we're probably getting Ray and Dom at SummerSlam.
Yeah, exactly.
And I feel like that was enough right there to be like, oh, it's going to happen tonight, but it didn't. So it's it's a little Easter egg for us to look back at in the future, I think.
Yeah, and it's so wrestling is so nuanced like that. So like sometimes wrestling hits you in the head like a blunt object. Sometimes it's so nuanced. I mentioned it in the talk along thread that it looks like he's in purple and green. That's that's the Joker's colors. But then I was like, you know what? Maybe I wasn't really paying attention so much to that backstage segment. I got to wait till Dom comes limping out here to make sure that wasn't green and red, because then he's Robin to his dad's Batman.
Oh, yeah.
And, okay, no, it is purple, so that's a little weird. We'll see where this is going.
Sure. And it's interesting because it's very light news here. We're talking about ring gear and stuff, but Rey Mysterio, with his Adam West, Charlotte made headlines with dressing as Cruella DeVille. Her ring gear was, Dalmatian print. So she was inspired by Cruella DeVille. Interesting how many people picked up on that, and that's been a buzz on the internet as well. Watch out, Charlotte. You're probably going to get some hate from PETA and the likes.
Sure.
And then Seth Rollins, I don't know. We were talking before the show where this guy gets his clothes, but white suit that looks like, what's the artist?
Jackson Pollock.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of creativity in ring gear. So congratulations to those that were on the show. So John, in the opening monologue there, I said, is 6 matches the perfect length for a WWE pay-per-view? And I starting to think that it was. You had a title change early on the undercard, and it was this feel-good father-son thing that everybody's kind of looking forward to.
Sure. You
had 2 really good main events.
Yes.
You had the zombie thing that turned a lot of people off, but because there were only 6 matches, that means at least a third of it was like really high quality, right? And so that can make a show when it's that small. If you have 12 matches and those 2 really good matches are only 20 minutes on a 4-hour card,
right,
it ruins the show. But I think this was great.
Yeah, I think the pacing was really good. Everyone got, okay, so you had Priest and Miz, which was with the ridiculousness of the zombies. They only got about 7 minutes of actual ring time. But everybody else got time to show what they could do. Everyone else got around 15 minutes until you got to the main event where they got, nearly a half hour. So, yeah, the pacing of the show and just letting people show you what they could do. Like, there's nobody who got cheated on that card.
No.
So I think your idea that this 6 might just be the right number is, very strong.
So give us 6 matches on Monday Night Raw tonight, and we'll all go home happy. 6 15-minute matches, and we'll all be happy. So there's words of advice, stealing John Smith's gimmick. Hell in the Cell, June 20th was announced on the show last night. What are they doing? This is not October.
I'm reading that again. Once my TV's over here, and as I'm taking notes on my computer, sometimes I'm only watching out of the corner of my eye. I thought I saw that. Then I read you and someone else mention it in the watch along thread, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense. But I did a quick Google search. There was still, the first thing that comes up in Google for that date, WWE, was Money in the Bank. As of last night, that was still out there, in the ether as the date for Money in the Bank. So now, if you're going to have multiple Hell in a Cell matches, like if they're going to squeeze 3 of them into that card or whatever, you could probably throw the 2 ladder matches in there too.
Sure. Yeah.
At which point you probably should have just called the the pay-per-view Extreme Rules. You know, throw all that together, but yeah, an odd decision.
Yeah. So by just adjusting my calendar, the Royal Rumble should be in August. So we should be and WrestleMania will have around November. So we're good.
Rules don't apply anymore. It's chaos.
Yeah. It's cats and dogs sleeping together. Yep.
There you go.
So other stuff that happened on the card, Sheamus did defeat Ricochet on the pre-show. Rhea Ripley retained over Asuka and Charlotte. Bianca retained over Bayley. And those were that made up the whole card. So that's WrestleMania Backlash from last night. I would say that if people missed it, it's probably worth going back and watching at least the last 2 matches.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I don't think people will be disappointed with that. So, but it wasn't the only show this past weekend. Also, Impact Under Siege happened on Saturday, and there was a lot of news coming out of that, or at least a couple of big news items. And first and foremost, Moose is the number 1 contender. He won the 6-way. When I look at the whole Impact roster, Moose is the one guy who I'm like, this is the credible threat to Kenny Omega. I'm really surprised that this is going to be a match next month at an Impact Plus special. It was announced already that it'll be Moose versus Omega at Against All Odds. That's June 12th. They're not waiting for Slammiversary, which is a paid event.
Right.
They're doing it next month. Now, John, I think you brought up maybe it's going to be Moose Omega Funny Business next month, and we could get a legitimate match the next, type of thing. Maybe they stretch it out to multiple matches, but Moose Omega.
Yeah, the other thing that it made me think of immediately that they're going to this earlier than we certainly would have thought likely. Okay, I know Travis kind of was against this idea, but you have said on multiple occasions, and I was thinking right along the same lines, that when the belt collector gimmick starts to break down, probably the first thing Kenny loses is AEW. Because you would want him to be protected as that's where he belongs. That's his main title, and everything. So there's not, that Hangman Page match, which we all believe will be that match, just got pushed, further away by Hangman getting knocked down the ranking system. So Moose, maybe it's not going to be even Moose. Maybe we're all going to get that dream scenario that on April 15th, everyone immediately jumped to. Samoa Joe comes back to Impact and brings back the title, brings the title home. That's a hell of a match. I'm signing up for that right now.
Yeah. Or Daniel Bryan, there's a couple of options out there. Yeah, it's real interesting. So it's also funny that Against All Odds, that is a gambling themed event, right? Yeah. And that's the AEW thing. Like a Double or Nothing is March 30th or May 30th. 12 days later is Against All Odds. So you'll play on words there. That's fun, whatever. But I don't think Pac or Orange Cassidy are winning the AEW World Championship at the end of the month. So if my theory holds true that Omega is going to lose the AEW Championship first, then I think Moose is probably not winning June 12th. But who knows? Impact will be Impact.
Yeah, very true.
But I don't see AEW letting that belt go. Now, other news from Under Siege, Rachel Ellering and Jordynne Grace, they lost the tag team titles that they had just won the month before. They lost them back to Fire and Flava, who are now 2-time tag team champions over there at Impact. Good for them. Sorry for Jordynne and Rachel. They made a lot of big deal about Jordynne being sort of the weak link. That was the whole storyline going in from Fire and Flava. And Jordynne did eat the pin here. So, maybe in my head, I'm thinking, okay, Jordynne's going to turn. So we get a new flavor of Jordynne Grace. Well, we'll have to see what happens. Maybe they'll turn. Maybe they'll, reinvigorate and go back after those titles. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. They put all that effort into just kind of, like you said, calling her the weak link, calling her the non-factor, which to me set up for her having a dominating performance in my mind.
Right.
And it just didn't have sometimes I just overthink things when it comes to Impact, because you just can't think linear when you're talking about Impact, because things just don't. Your wrestling fandom for me, which is now 40 years on, Impact just doesn't care what you think, doesn't care what you do. They're just throwing darts at the wall.
Here's your logic. You hold on to that.
Exactly.
We're going to do what we want.
Put that in your back pocket. We don't care.
Now, Madman Fulton and Ace Austin earlier in the evening, they won the Fatal 4-Way Tag Team match. They beat Triple XL, TJP and PD Williams, and Rohit and Shera to become the number 1 contenders. They're getting their title match right away. Finn Juice versus Austin and Fulton will be this Thursday on Impact Wrestling. So that's another title match that we know that's coming up. So right around the corner. And this leads credit to your theory, John. This is the year of Ace Austin.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought perhaps they would put this off to the pay-per-view, in which case I could see, Finn Juice saying like, all right, we've been here stateside X amount of weeks. It's time for us to go home. So we'll turn the belts over here. But now that it's happening this quickly, I'm a little less confident, but I'm still going to be rooting for my completely random theory that I came up with earlier in the year.
Well, and my theory was that not New Japan, but Impact was going to lose all their titles to outside entities. But ELP did not get the job done. It was a great match, ELP versus Josh Alexander on Saturday night, but ELP did not take home the X Division Championship. So I was ready. I was like, okay, if ELP wins this, then Fabi Apache is going to beat Deanna at Triple Mania, and then it's just the Knockouts tag titles that are left. So, which of course they'll lose them to Natalia and Tamina at the next pay-per-view or something. So
I was thinking the Iconics, right after they show up at AEW.
Right. There you go. So there we have it. That's the main news coming out of Under Siege, but we also had Brian Myers got a win over Black Taurus, Tennille Dashwood and Taylor Wilde. They beat Susan and Kimber Lee. W. Morrissey got a win over Willie Mack. Perazo retained over Havoc. And Eddie Edwards and Finn Juice defeated Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers. Now, Omega didn't take the pin here. Carl Anderson did. Yeah. So it's not like we're going to see Eddie versus Omega. That's not perfectly set up, but technically Eddie Edwards has a win over Omega in a tag match. So
there you go.
Maybe we'll get that starting to roll. Another fun thing over the weekend on Saturday, Game Changer Wrestling also had draft day in Las Vegas. And at the end of the show, it was Nick Gage defending against AJ Gray. Nick Gage got his win. Of course, Nick Gage was featured on Dark Side of the Ring last week. But Renee Paquette's husband told her that he was going to the gas station. He, in fact, went to the GCW show and attacked Nick Gage. So this is the second GCW show, 2 out of the last 3 shows where Moxley attacked Gage. He also did this in Tampa. They brawled. That ended the show. Obviously, we're getting Nick Gage versus John Moxley sometime down the road on GCW, but it hasn't happened yet. So I haven't got an announcement.
This whole forbidden door thing is it's just wonderful. These guys just showing up. This is what's been missing, and this is my complaint about WWE. Well, we can't have surprises because we've got stockholders, and we've got to let them know what's going on. Do you not realize that the biggest moment and era of your business, everyone's ass was in their seats watching your product because they had no idea what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And that is sorely missing from the WWE, but good golly, we are getting it everywhere else, and that is just fantastic.
I think that it would prove correct if they did a big surprise every week. Now, it takes a lot of planning, a lot of thought to do a big surprise that's meaningful every week, but that's what would make it must watch. And if they skipped a week, that's okay. people will still come back if they're trained, but right now they know it'll be announced, and if it's not announced, it's not happening. So we shall see. A couple other things from that show. I saw a guy named Jack Cartwheel on the show. He was in the opening match. Joey Janela was on commentary. Jack Cartwheel did a Sasuke special through a door and a corkscrew shooting star press. So it was pretty fun stuff. You can see, if you look him up on Twitter, you can see those moves. They're kind of tweeted all weekend. So that's fun. And then Ron Funches was doing commentary for this GCW show, and he was awesome. I hope that the con in charge of WWE at least sees a couple of clips of this, because Ron Funches was great. Very funny.
He is a very good. He's a very funny guy. I know a little bit about his stand up, but I've seen him in a couple of sitcoms, and he always makes me giggle. So I can only imagine. I know he's, I think, a Detroit guy. So there's a lot of wrestling. That's a big market. So yeah, I'm sure he's been a wrestling fan his whole life. So
somebody took an apron bomb, and Funches, a great line, riffing off of the hardest part of the ring line. He says, "Oh, he just got power bombed on what must be the second or third hardest part of the ring," which just came out of nowhere. It was hysterical. So, all right, lots of headlines, lots of things happening in the world of wrestling to talk about in the next segment. We're going to take a quick break and tell you about all the ways that you can support the show. But stick with us. We'll be back in about 2 minutes.
All right.
The Daily Wrestling News Show. If you do, I'd like to tell you how you can support us. Check out the new Crucifix t-shirt from bodyslamclothes.com. The shirt comes for $20. That includes your shipping. That includes XXL, XXL, and the super soft style. So there's no upcharge for any of that stuff. And if you like that shirt, there's a whole bunch of others. And if you buy two, use the promo code SHIRTS10 at checkout for 10% off your order. That's bodyslamclothes.com. And join Joey Jarzanka, Ian Schreier, and Rob DeLuca on Friday nights for the Primetime Rundown. They take you through the world of sports. The show kicks off at 6 p.m. on the Eastern Observer. And each Tuesday, Al Carl hosts the Essential Wrestling Podcast alongside John Smith, myself, John DeConnie, and Gary Mahaffey. It's another week of updates and highlights in the world of wrestling. Here are our analysis on who we think is going to win the week's matches. Coverage begins at 6 p.m. on the Eastern Observer. And Pro Wrestling Pick'em. This is a fantasy sports website dedicated to pro wrestling. It's where you can test your predictive skills in the world of pro wrestling against your friends, against the universe. Whatever the case may be, you can create an account, join a league, or create a league. Just compete against your friends, have a good time with it. No gambling here. It's just good fun at ProWrestlingPick'em.com. And the Body Slam Brigade newsletter. This newsletter is going out to over 4,200 people each and every week on Fridays. And you get all the top stories consolidated in one place. It's quick to read, it's broken up by company, and it's free. Written by me for you for free. Join the list at bodyslambrigade.com. And then this show, of course, the Daily Wrestling News Show. It's here every day, Monday through Thursday at 10 a.m. Occasionally we drop in on Fridays. You can listen to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can watch us live on YouTube and Facebook. You can also get it there on demand as well. So do check out the Daily Wrestling News Show each and every day. Thank you for your support. All right, thank you. So we're back.
Yes, sir.
So headlines, tons of headlines coming up today from over the weekend and whatnot. But I want to start with headlines that would have occurred in 1949, 1963, and 1993. Dave and Earl Hebner were born this day in 1949. So happy 72nd birthday to Dave and Earl Hebner. Bruno Sammartino defeated Buddy Rogers in 1963 on this day to begin the 7-year title reign that everybody's been chasing ever since. So happy championship day to Bruno Sammartino. And in the 1993, in a moment I'm sure everybody remembers, it's the culmination of the whole barbershop window feud. Marty Jannetty defeated Shawn Michaels for the Intercontinental Championship.
I didn't get through the whole thing, but the Shawn Michaels A&E premiered last night, and yes. I think that's right about the point where I said, all right, let me pause it here. It was right around the barbershop window, so right about when those two men parted ways.
I haven't had a chance to watch that. Of course, it's interesting when, that's a huge show for WWE to be running, and they're running a pay-per-view against it.
Yeah.
You would have thought they would coordinate a little bit there, but not the case. So, I guess key headline from over the weekend is that New Jack passed away at the age of 58. Now, I don't have a ton of familiarity with New Jack. I did see the Dark Side of the Ring special on him, so I know he's a very real type of guy, very threatening presence. John, I think you're a little bit more familiar with New Jack than I am.
Yeah, and I think Paul Heyman he's so brilliant whenever he speaks. He did about a 3-minute soliloquy eulogizing him on what was it, Talking Smack, I guess. And he's so careful with his words, because you're going to take a lot of heat if you see anything all that laudatory about Jerome Young, New Jack, because quite frankly, he was, sometimes a liability, but that cult of extreme is such a brotherhood. It's such a fraternity. And I think, what did Heyman said? His first thought was that it might be a gag, because this is exactly the kind of thing that New Jack would do: sell a bunch of T-shirts, read all his own press clippings about how people would eulogize him, and then say like, "Gotcha." Yeah. But he went on to say that he was the most non-PG wrestler in wrestling history, and the most glorious thing he had to say about him was that he was quite an individual. So it came off as heartfelt, it came off as sincere, but he was very careful not to say anything overly positive about New Jack, because there's a lot of people on the other end of the spectrum in terms of their fandom who would have just ripped Paulie apart, and he just did a masterful job tiptoeing around that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, New Jack is known for some rather heinous acts, I guess, how you'd put it. But in any event, a lot of people think well of him, I guess. So rest in peace, New Jack.
Indeed.
New Japan Pro Wrestling returns on May 26th or May 22nd. I got braces, folks. May 22nd in Nagoya. Their May 24th, 25th, and 26th events at Kirk and Hall will go on as planned. No cards announced for any of this. This is coming off of big cancellations and postponements associated with COVID. Specifically, the big postponements were stadium shows that they had in Yokohama and in Tokyo. So it's good to see that they're back going. They didn't miss too much. They just got to get those stadium shows rescheduled. Now, here's a fun piece of headline. Tommy Dreamer mentioned on Busted Open Radio that there are more New Japan wrestlers heading to Impact. As a little sidebar, Okada and Naito are both appearing in those Slammiversary teasers. So the Forbidden Door's open. My whole theory about those titles all getting lost to outside entities is still out there. So very interesting.
Yeah. It's just so much fun just waiting to see, what's going to happen, who's going to show up. And, I very much look forward to, even though I'm not overly exposed to New Japan, if somebody shows up, I'm going to be really excited, because I know that, they're not. I mean, look, the last person that they sent, El Phantasmo, good God, the match that he put on. And,
absolutely.
And more than one of them, in that the 6-man scramble that led up to the title shot, he, had the high spot of that ridiculous Death Valley driver off the top turnbuckle onto the floor. I mean, just insanity.
After walking the ropes, like half the ring on the ropes with TJP, Ace Austin jumps on him and he catches him into a Death Valley, onto a fireman's carry, and then does the DVD to the floor. Incredible balance. So I'm looking forward to seeing a few more of these New Japan guys. And of course, there will be a Young Rock Christmas special, because of course there will.
I can't wait to see Andre dressed up as Santa.
Exactly. WWE applied for some trademarks. I'm nobody's bitch and obvious. Jey Uso t-shirt and merchandising arm. And then there's never a bad time to have a good time, John DeConnie.
This one worries me a little bit. Not so much that, it's anything necessarily important, but this smacks of the kind of performer that's going to come through the curtain, and Michael Cole is going to hit that vintage catchphrase of his, "This is a guy who loves to have fun." And, that it didn't work out so well for Zack Ryder, Adam Rose, No Way Jose. Obviously, the New Day have gone on to have themselves a nice career. So, whoever gets, tagged with this gimmick, Dominus Omnis, I pray that your career goes the way of the New Day, not No Way Jose.
Probably going to be, the phrase they use for Karrion Kross when they call him up, right?
Sure.
Okay, so here's two stories that are kind of linked together. Really interesting. So Zelina Vega made an appearance at the WWE Performance Center. Apparently, this is in anticipation of her return to WWE. This was reported by Fightful Select and then later verified by a bunch of others. So this is happening. Zelina Vega is going to come back to WWE at some point in the not too distant future. So all the stuff that happened when she got released, apparently there were not many hard feelings because she's able to have that door open back up to her. But here's the second story that's somewhat related. WWE shut down their talent management division.
Yes.
Now, this is the division that they set up to handle third-party relations. In other words, people's Twitch, people's cameos, all that stuff, which is why Zelina walked in the first place.
Yep.
So I don't think they're totally walking back all their third-party policies,
right,
but they're certainly not prioritizing it as high, and maybe they could work out some sort of deal. But that whole division, they hired a new director into that position, laid off. You can go see her. She's looking for a job on LinkedIn. So very interesting that it happened kind of this quick.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, long story short, I don't know about the whole corporate structure and whatnot, but good for Zelina and Alistair, quite frankly. So, good for them, and be happy to have her back because she was quite a talent.
100%. And honestly, like, Angel Garza misses her, right? Like, whether or not, you can't say anything except for he has lost steam since she's been gone. And Andrade, he left the company.
Yeah.
For other reasons and stuff, but he was on fire when she was there.
Yeah.
And,
just another case of them having something that everyone not in the writer's room looked at these things and went like, this is really good. This is really working. And then someone, perhaps the senior man in the room, says, well, let's go another way.
Yeah.
And leave everyone else scratching their head.
So we will welcome Zelina Vega back onto television, whether it's on NXT, SmackDown, Raw, whatever. Wherever she is, welcome back.
100%.
WWE crowned new tag team champions on Friday when Tamina and Nia Jax defeated when Tamina and Natalya defeated Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax on SmackDown. There's been an outpouring of support for both, so congratulations to those two. Wasn't enough to make WrestleMania Backlash, even though it was a WrestleMania rematch. But I guess Nia and Shayna will not be doing their rounds anymore. Now we will have Natalya and Tamina on every show.
Good for those ladies. Absolutely.
I guess not on NXT anymore, though, because they have their own tag titles.
True.
So,
yes.
Just brand to brand, not brand to brand to brand. So there is a new music album that just dropped, new songs and disses from Max Caster. It is the critically acclaimed Volume 1. So go ahead and get that, and then go get a Band-Aid from your ears bleeding.
Yeah, I'm not even going to comment.
Well, one thing, as bad as that audio might be, one thing that is really good for your ears, Mark Andrews put out his love letter to pro wrestling. I think it's a small mini series he's doing with the BBC. It's fantastic. Mark Andrews, of course, NXT UK athlete, he's a former tag team champion from Wales. And this is just a really fun, short, audio series, about 30 minutes. I listened to it in the car on the way home yesterday. Great stuff. He had on Drew McIntyre. He had on Charlotte Flair. He had on a whole host of different people, Edge, and it was just very good, well produced. His parents were on there. It's his love letter to pro wrestling.
It's a great title. And when you texted me about that yesterday, I know you used to live in the Mid-Atlantic region. I really need to get up to speed on NXT UK because my first thought was the Baltimore Ravens tight end Mark Andrews is now there's a lot of NFL tight ends, not the least of which Gronk, who was a 24/7 champion, George Kittle out in San Francisco, who goes, he's kind of nicknamed Stone Cold George Kittle. Travis Kelce, even, I'm like, all right, it makes sense. Another big burly tight end who's a real big wrestling fan. And then I went and looked it up and went like, this is not him.
What would Ryan know about football?
I keep forgetting that you're not so much a fan of the unscripted sports.
That's right. Unapologetically uninterested. Okay. All right, so it is time. When you hear that noise, you know it's trivia time, and I only have one question for you this week. Everybody's going to get a chance to get 1 point. All the questions are coming from WrestleMania Backlash. So, John, your first question is, or your only question for the week is, what was the first word spoken by Adnan Virk on last night's main show broadcast? Your choices. You, welcome, it's Charlotte.
It's
you. So he said you're looking at the Thunderdome live or something like that. So
you are looking live. Okay, very good.
Yep. So that's that. All right, I guess finally, so you don't get a point for that, but the trivia score is currently 1-1. You got a point, and Al's got a point for the month. So you're giving people a chance to catch up. All right, so AEW Dark Elevation is tonight. Paul White's showcases with Ryan Nemeth. Kevin Blackwood and Kevin Bennett are facing the Acclaimed. I bring that up only because they're from upstate New York, guys, so they're people that Travis would be interested in. And Dustin Rhodes is facing Aaron Solo in one of the only kind of competitive type of matches on the show. So that's what we've got for Dark Elevation. And aside from that, John, that's our show. And tomorrow is the 100th episode of the Daily Wrestling News Show. So we have a special show planned. It's going to be a panel of people talking. All the regular co-hosts and everything will be there. So
very much looking forward to it.
100%. Should be a great show. Okay, for John. John, anything else you want to talk about?
Oh no, I think we hit all the high spots. We put a nice bow on things just like we always do.
Absolutely. All right, folks. For John, I am Ryan, and we will see you tomorrow.